Mike Tyson is apparently mad at Hulu for making a documentary on him. While most people would be over the moon for having a whole documentary dedicated to them, the retired boxer couldn't be less thrilled. Tyson is slamming the network for stealing his story and using it to make profit. Keep watching, as we'll be covering that and more in today's video. First up, Tyson slams Hulu. Mike Tyson began his professional boxing career back in 1985 and kept at it for 20 years before he finally retired. Just his boxing record alone is a compelling story, having won 19 bouts in a row since his debut, all through knockouts, more than half of which ended in the first round. That sort of performance hasn't been replicated since. However, Tyson's personal life was a turbulent and wild ride that requires its own discussion as well. Hulu clearly felt the same and greenlit the production of a miniseries titled Mike, documenting the boxer's life and career, from his personal relationships to the fights that made him a legend. Unfortunately, Tyson reported that he wasn't compensated for the company using his image and story, leading the retired boxer to slam them publicly on social media. He criticized them for not paying him and then told readers that they shouldn't let Hulu fool them, as he does not support the production. He went a step further, delivering a strong message to heads at the company that is now being plastered across every news outlet. He said that it's 2022, not 1822, and likened what Hulu was doing with his story to the American slave trade, with the company taking advantage of his life without his consent like slave masters. Those are some heavy words, but they're clearly working to bring attention to the issue at hand. Next, what did Tyson say about Dana White? According to Tyson's social media posts, it appears that Hulu had approached UFC president Dana White to try and get him to promote the series. White has a lot of influence owing to the UFC's domination of the MMA entertainment industry, so an endorsement from him would drive up a lot of attention from audiences that are invested in combat sports. Tyson's post suggests that White was offered millions of dollars in order to do so. However, the UFC owner has a close relationship with Tyson and therefore turned down the promotional deal. Iron Mike commended White, saying that he honored friendship and treating people with dignity. He also added that he'd never forget White standing up for his friend, just like he won't forget how Hulu stole his story from him. After his initial posts, he then added that someone from Hulu needs to be fired because they blatantly lied to friends of his about him supporting the production. This isn't even the first time Tyson's discussed his issues with the show. He was criticizing it as early as February of last year. Back then, he publicly stated that it was a tone-deaf cultural misappropriation of the story of his life. The tone-deaf part of that statement refers to the social upheaval that had been taking place at the time as a result of the black community in America feeling oppressed and neglected. Tyson specifically noted that the show's announcement came at a time when social disparities were very apparent. Moving on, is Iron Mike telling the truth? The first few episodes of the limited series Mike have been released, and many are wondering how much of it is true and how much is drama added for the pleasure of audiences. Considering Tyson himself has lambasted the creators of the show, it brings into question not just the credibility of the producers, but of the content of the series as well. So, we'll be going over some of the most dubious events of the show and discussing what's real and what's not. For starters, let's discuss the show's opener. The first episode begins with an origin story of sorts for Tyson, showing us his life as a child growing up in Brooklyn. Tyson is frequently bullied by other kids in his neighborhood because of his weight and now iconic lisp. At one point, a bully goes too far and rips the head off one of Tyson's pet pigeons, throwing the blood on him as a joke. Tyson understandably becomes enraged and proceeds to beat the boy, and that's how the show says he got into fighting. For those who don't know much about Tyson, this may come off as typical Hollywood stuff, but the thing is, Tyson has repeatedly gone on record himself to retell the story, both in interviews and on his personal Twitter account. Back in 2013, he even joked that the incident was love at first fight, sparking his obsession with boxing. Lastly, Mike and big cats. Mike Tyson has had a pretty interesting public persona, and his larger-than-life demeanor and history eventually led to him having a cameo in The Hangover. In the movie, the protagonists steal a tiger from the boxer as part of a series of drunken romps in Las Vegas. Though everything in the movie is outrageous, and Tyson plays an exaggerated version of himself, there's some truth in that story arc. In Mike, the story shifts between the past and present, with Tyson recounting parts of his life in a solo stage show called Undisputed Truth. Early on in episode 1, he tells the audience directly that he once had a prison phone call with his car dealer during which he ordered pet tigers. Tyson has in real life corroborated that story, appearing on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast in 2019 and giving details on that event. While Tyson was doing time for a rape conviction back in the 90s, he learned from a well-connected friend that he could exchange his luxury cars for tiger cubs. He said that he was fairly young, so when he'd heard about the deal, he figured having tigers as pets would be cool. He managed to have them delivered a few months before his release. Eventually, he added a few more to his household, some of which actually slept in his bed. He did later grow out of that phase, relocating the exotic animals to sanctuaries. Other news. First up, Comcast expects Disney Hulu buyout. Ever since 2019, Disney has owned 36% of Hulu thanks to their acquisition of the majority of Fox's assets in a $71 $21 billion deal. That left Comcast with a remaining 33% minority stake in the company. Once the Fox deal had closed, Comcast was considering the idea of buying the entirety of Hulu through a deal with Disney, but Disney outright dismissed that proposition. Since Comcast couldn't buy Hulu, they came to an unusual agreement with the Mouse in May of 2019. That agreement stipulated that Comcast would sell its remaining stake in the company as early as 2024, given that Disney guaranteed a sale price valuing Hulu at a minimum of $27 billion. However, the sale price spiked thanks to the global pandemic, leading the higher-ups in Comcast to think that Disney would reconsider selling its shares rather than buying out Comcast. Considering that Disney is currently focused on its own Disney Plus platform, it would make sense that they'd avoid having to spend a large sum on the Comcast deal. As it stands, the future of Hulu is uncertain. Comcast executives think that it makes more sense for Disney to relinquish their hold on the platform, as they already have their own plans related to Disney Plus. But Hulu's average revenue per user is more than triple of Disney Plus's, giving Disney execs more incentive to stick with the platform. Next, History of a Pleasure Seeker not moving forward. Back in March, a show titled History of a Pleasure Seeker was ordered to pilot on Hulu. The show would be a musical based on a novel of the same name written by Richard Mason. It was to be set in 1907 in Amsterdam, following a young man's adventures through the hedonism of the city in that period. Mason had actually adapted the novel for the screen and was also set to be an executive producer, while Julianne Robinson directed the pilot. It isn't clear why the pilot didn't go forward, but the decision comes about a month after the platform picked up several other shows to series, including projects that have big names like Leonardo DiCaprio and Martin Scorsese attached. Lastly, Alien series concept art released. An Alien series based on Ridley Scott's original series is being developed, and Noah Hawley of Fargo and Legion fame is helming the project. It's said that the series will take place prior to Ripley's engagement with the xenomorphs in the original film from 1979. Now, we've got some actual content to dive into, with the concept art showing a new Weyland-Yutani spaceship crashing into a rival corporation's city, as well as an image of a xenomorph grabbing a soldier by the head mid-air. Another piece of art shows two soldiers coming upon xenomorph eggs. Hawley is looking to capture the feel of the early films, and the concept art suggests he might just succeed. That's a wrap for this video. Do you think Tyson went too far in his criticism of Hulu? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.